Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello.
Today we're really getting into the life of Queen Elizabeth II. It's such a long and, well, fascinating story.
It really is. The sources we have paint this picture of a leader navigating, just decades of enormous change, both globally and personally, too.
Absolutely. And for you listening, especially if you enjoy, really understanding a topic thoroughly, getting those different perspectives, we're going to try and unpack not just what happened, but maybe some of the why behind it all.
Exactly. We'll try to connect the dots. Our source material, it's mainly this quite accessible story that follows her life chronologically. It hits the major events, the challenges.
So the mission today, really pull out the most compelling insights from this narrative, give you that well-rounded picture of her life, her role, her influence, without getting bogged down. Aiming for those, aha moments.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Okay, let's unpack this. Chapter 1, the very beginning. April 1926. Born, interestingly, not in a palace, a London townhouse.
That's right. And crucially, she wasn't actually expected to become queen.
Not at all.
No. Daughter of the Duke and Duchess of York. He was Prince Albert, King George V's second son. And her mother, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, from Scottish nobility. So not the direct heir initially.
And they had that nickname for her, Lilibet. Gives a nice sense of that close family feel early on.
It does. And her childhood, it seems, was relatively quiet, educated at home.
Yeah, subjects like history, language, literature, music, and apparently a real love for horses and dogs from early on.
Which stayed with her, didn't it?
Oh, definitely. Described as calm, quite serious, but also playful with her younger sister, Margaret.
That early environment, private education, strong family, it seems like it instilled that sense of duty, that respect for tradition quite early, even with the playful side.
A well-developed character, yeah. But then comes this huge pivotal moment, 1936.
The abdication crisis.
Her uncle, King Edward VIII, gives up the throne.
Why?
I don't know. To marry Wallace Simpson, an American divorcee.
A massive scandal at the time, and it just completely changed the course of her life. Suddenly, her father is King George VI.
And she, at just 10 years old, becomes the heir apparent.
Imagine that. 10 years old, this massive, unexpected weight of destiny landing on her shoulders.
It's quite something. And unlike other heirs, she hadn't been sort of groomed for this specific role from day one.
No, exactly. So this sudden shift, it must have profoundly shaped her understanding of duty, of the personal sacrifices involved.
And her education had to change immediately.
Completely. The focus shifted heavily onto government, world affairs, leadership skills.
She started studying the British Constitution, Parliament. Even got private lessons from the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Serious stuff. Really preparing her for the specifics of the role she now faced, and more public appearances started happening too.
Getting her used to that side of things. Then, of course, World War II breaks out. A huge upheaval.
A defining period for everyone. She and Margaret spent a lot of the war at Windsor Castle while London was being bombed.
Safer, but still the family staying in the country. And at just 14, she did her first radio broadcast.
Yes. Comforting children who'd been evacuated or separated from their families. Think about that responsibility for a teenager.
Incredible. It really foreshadows that role she would play, doesn't it? That sort of calm, reassuring presence.
It really does. It's an early glimpse. And staying at Windsor, symbolically, it put the royals alongside the nation facing the danger.
Then in 1945, she does something even more remarkable for a princess at the time.
The ATS, the Auxiliary Territorial Service.
She joins up aged 18, trains as a driver and a mechanic.
The first female royal to actively serve in the military like that, it wasn't just symbolic. She was learning practical skills, changing tires, driving trucks.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? That solidarity. It must have really connected her with ordinary people's experiences during the war.
Absolutely. It showed a real commitment, a willingness to get involved, definitely built respect.
And amidst all this global turmoil and service, a personal story is unfolding too. Prince Philip.
Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, she'd met him when she was just 13.
And they started writing to each other. Their relationship grew from there.
Yes. His background was quite different, though still royal. Served in the Royal Navy, his family roots spread across Europe, but not much wealth or British title at the time.
An interesting dynamic. He had this naval career, a different perspective perhaps.
Seemed to complement her own sense of duty, maybe? A strong character in his own right.
They got engaged in 1947.
And married later that year at Westminster Abbey.
Our source really emphasizes the timing right after the war. It was seen as this moment of joy, of hope.
Definitely. A symbol of renewal, of optimism for a country still recovering, a young royal couple, a fresh start. It was a welcome celebration.
Okay, let's move forward a bit. Chapter 2. The Young Queen, 1952.
A pivotal year. Elizabeth and Philip are on a royal tour visiting Kenya.
Part of that post-war effort to connect with the Commonwealth.
Exactly. And while they're there, they receive the news.
Her father, King George VI, has died. Unexpectedly.
Suddenly, at just 25, she's no longer Princess Elizabeth. She's Queen Elizabeth II.
What a moment. Overseas. Hearing that news. The weight of it.
The accounts say she returned immediately, stepped off the plane back in Britain, already embodying that sense of calm, of strength, despite her own grief. It speaks volumes.
That innate sense of duty kicking in immediately.
And then the following year, 1953, the coronation.
June 2nd, Westminster Abbey. And this was huge
The
because
billions. The first coronation ever broadcast on TV.
millions watched it. Not just in Britain, but around the world, seeing all the ancient symbols, the crown, the scepter, the orb.
It was a masterful move, really, modernizing the monarchy's connection with people, letting them witness the ceremony, the tradition firsthand, fostered a huge sense of unity.
And her vow of service during that ceremony. It wasn't just words, was it? It defined her whole life.
Absolutely. A lifelong commitment made very publicly.
Now, the world she inherited was changing fast. The British Empire was transforming.
Into the Commonwealth of Nations, and she took on this crucial role as head of the Commonwealth.
So, not ruling, but connecting these independent nations. Friendship, shared values.
Precisely. It was a massive geopolitical shift, moving from empire to this voluntary association. Her role was pivotal, often relying on personal relationships with leaders. It was quite the diplomatic feat.
And travel became a constant feature. Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, countless places.
These extensive tours were vital for cementing those Commonwealth ties, projecting stability, goodwill, connecting with incredibly diverse peoples. The logistics alone must have been staggering.
She became this global symbol of, well, continuity, didn't she?
Stability, tradition, but also adapting.
Meanwhile, back in Britain, the 50s and 60s saw massive social shifts. Music, fashion, culture, the swinging 60s.
Huge changes. And through it all, her role seemed to be representing that sense of unity, that anchor of national identity amidst the flux.
A constant figure when everything else felt like it was changing.
Her image became a reference point, a symbol of enduring values.
This script also mentions her relationship with her prime ministers, starting with Churchill.
Those weekly private meetings, a unique part of the system.
Where she could offer insights, advice, but always staying politically neutral.
Imagine the institutional memory she built up over decades, meeting week after week, year after year with successive leaders. Her apolitical perspective must have been invaluable.
A deep understanding of her constitutional limits, but also her potential influence.
And alongside all this statecraft, motherhood.
Prince Charles, born in 48, Princess Anne in 50, then later Prince Andrew in 60, and Prince Edward in 64.
Balancing those immense public duties with raising a family, under constant scrutiny, not easy.
That human dimension, trying to manage both crown and children.
It resonated with people, that balancing act.
And even early on, there were questions about the monarchy's role in this new modern world.
That tension was always there, wasn't it, between tradition and modernity?
But her response seems to have been this unwavering commitment to service to her she inherited.
That deep sense of duty was her anchor. It allowed her to navigate those changing expectations, to adapt while holding on to the core purpose. Quite a balancing act for so long.
Okay, so moving into the 80s and 90s, the narrative calls this chapter Storms Behind the Crown. Things get turbulent.
They certainly do. Public scrutiny really intensifies, especially around the younger royals and their very, very public lives.
The media landscape was changing dramatically too, wasn't it? Tabloid culture booming.
Absolutely. Much harder to control the narrative, maintain privacy, a whole new level of intrusion.
And right at the center of it, the marriage of Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer in 1981.
The fairy tale wedding, watched by billions, immense global focus.
But the reality, as we know, turned out very differently. Growing troubles, clashing personalities.
And Diana's incredible fame, the media's obsession with her, it put enormous pressure on the marriage and on the whole family.
The contrast between the fairy tale image and the public unraveling. It created a real crisis for the monarchy's image, didn't it?
A huge crisis. Diana's popularity, the public sympathy for her, it forced a real reckoning.
Then comes 1992, which the Queen herself famously called her.
Annus Horribilis, her horrible year.
And it really was the separation of Charles and Diana announced. Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson separate. Princess Anne gets divorced.
A cascade of marital breakdowns hitting the headlines.
And on top of all that personal turmoil, the devastating fire at Windsor Castle.
It just seemed like one blow after another. Personal, institutional. It must have tested her resilience incredibly. The fire also raised awkward questions about finances, upkeep.
Yet through all this, the separations, the fire, the intense media scrutiny, she just kept going, didn't she? Performing her duties.
Steadfast. Those weekly PM meetings continued, the public engagements. Her commitment to the role itself seemed unwavering.
Providing that sense of stability even when her own family was in chaos. Remarkable personal discipline.
Then, 1996, Charles and Diana finally divorce. And just a year later.
The shock of Diana's death in Paris, August 1997.
The reaction was just unprecedented, this massive global outpouring of grief.
Unlike anything seen before for a royal figure, perhaps.
Arguably, yes. And the royal family's initial response, particularly the Queen's perceived silence or reserve, it drew a lot of criticism.
There was that disconnect, wasn't there, between the public's intense emotion and the traditional royal way of handling things.
A real watershed moment. It highlighted a gap, raised questions about whether the monarchy could connect with modern feelings.
But then she made that televised address.
Yes. A few days later, she spoke directly to the nation, acknowledged Diana's impact, spoke as a grandmother.
It was quite personal for her. And it seemed to really shift the public mood, didn't it?
It was crucial. It showed empathy, showed she understood the depth of public feeling. It demonstrated an ability to adapt, to communicate differently when needed. It helped bridge that gap.
Did this whole period lead to longer-term changes in the monarchy?
The narrative suggests it did. A move towards more openness, perhaps. Letting cameras in more, showing a bit more of the workings.
And that significant step, agreeing to pay income tax on her personal income.
Yes, that came out of the discussions around the Windsor fire funding. But it was a major concession to modern expectations of transparency and accountability.
Reflecting that broader shift in Britain too, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 90s saw more diversity, modernization, focus on personal freedom, all feeding into questions about a hereditary monarchy's relevance.
Absolutely. And yet, through all that questioning, she remained this constant presence. Her sheer longevity became part of her power, in a way.
A fixed point in a changing world.
And she kept up her international role, too, despite domestic troubles, meeting U.S. presidents, hosting Nelson Mandela, visits to China, Russia.
Still a significant figure on the world stage.
Undeniably, her role often transcended politics.
I think those years, the 80s and 90s, they really brought her human side into focus for people, didn't they?
Yeah.
Mother, grandmother, dealing with difficult family stuff, just under this incredible spotlight.
Definitely. It perhaps made her more relatable, showed the personal cost of that life, the pressures. A more nuanced picture emerged.
So let's move into the new millennium, the 2000s and 2010s. The chapter title is Grace in a Changing World.
And it really captures her continued presence, now in her 70s, 80s, but still very much active, carrying out her duties.
Remarkable energy. Then 2002, the Golden Jubilee. 50 years on the throne.
Huge celebrations across the UK and Commonwealth. A real milestone.
But that same year was also marked by profound personal loss for her.
Yes, the deaths of both her sister, Princess Margaret, and her mother, the Queen Mother, within a few weeks of each other.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Balancing this huge national celebration with that deep private grief.
It highlights those extraordinary conflicting demands of her role. Public figurehead, grieving daughter and sister. Her ability to manage both with such composure was quite something.
The narrative also mentions her adapting to technology, early email use, the royal website, social media.
It shows she wasn't stuck in the past. Understanding the need to connect through modern channels, stay relevant, accessible. A quiet evolution.
And then there was that moment of pure fun, the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony.
The James Bond sketch. Absolutely brilliant.
Good evening, Mr. Bond. Perfect. It showed that sense of humor, didn't it?
It really did. A wonderful, unexpected touch that delighted everyone. Showed a willingness to play along, be part of the national fun. Very endearing.
That year, 2012, was also her Diamond Jubilee. 60 years.
Another massive celebration. That huge River Thames pageant.
By this point, she really was that anchor, wasn't she? The one constant figure most people had known their entire lives.
For generations, yes. Representing continuity through decades of change.
And family life continued in the public eye. Charles marrying Camilla Parker Bowles in 2005. William marrying Catherine Middleton in 2011.
And the Queen seemed very supportive of these unions, looking towards the future, the continuity of the monarchy, head of state, but also head of the family.
She was also there during national crises, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Like the 2005 London bombings.
Yes, her response then was very important, offering calm, measured words, reminding people of resilience, that unifying role in times of tragedy.
Providing that stability when people felt vulnerable.
Exactly, a crucial part of the monarch's symbolic function.
And she just kept going. Into her 90s, still riding horses, attending engagements. Then in 2015, she surpasses Queen Victoria.
Becomes the longest reigning British monarch in history.
And her reaction was so typically her, wasn't it? Very understated.
It is simply the result of a long life. Just focused on the service, not the record itself. So characteristic.
By this stage, had she become this sort of grandmother to the nation?
I think that phrase captures something real. That widespread affection built over decades of duty, calm leadership, plus those flashes of humor, a familiar, reassuring presence.
Quiet evolution, adapting, but staying true to that core purpose.
That ability to balance tradition and modernity was key to her enduring relevance, I think.
Which brings us to the final chapter, her last years and her legacy.
Still serving with that quiet strength, that dignity, well into her 90s, even as, naturally, things slowed down physically.
Her mind seems sharp, though. The humor's still there.
Absolutely. But then, 2021, a huge personal blow.
The death of Prince Philip, after more than 73 years of marriage.
An incredible partnership. The absolute bedrock of her reign, personally.
And that image of her sitting alone at his funeral due to COVID restrictions.
Yeah.
It was so poignant, wasn't it?
Deeply moving. And it resonated because she was following the same rules as everyone else, even in her own immense grief. That sense of duty, again.
Yet even after losing him, she carried on.
Welcoming new prime ministers, meeting leaders, delivering that Christmas message in 2021.
The one where she talked about grief being the price of love. So moving.
It really connected with people, especially during the pandemic losses, showed incredible resilience.
Then 2022, the Platinum Jubilee. 70 years. Unprecedented for a British monarch.
A truly historic milestone, celebrations everywhere.
And one last delightful surprise, the Paddington Bear sketch.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. Just charming. A final glimpse of that playful side, that connection.
But her health was visibly declining by then, wasn't it? Fewer appearances during the Jubilee itself.
Yes, it was becoming clear. A poignant sign that this extraordinarily long reign was nearing its end.
And then, September 8th, 2022, the news breaks.
Queen Elizabeth II dies peacefully at Balmoral Castle, aged 96.
The reaction was just immense. Global mourning, tributes pouring in.
It truly marked the end of an era. Her reign had been such a constant for so many across the world. The scale of the reaction reflected her impact.
The state funeral was watched by billions. So much tradition, emphasizing duty.
A fitting tribute to that life of service. And then the immediate succession of King Charles III.
The monarchy continues, but it felt like the closing of a very long, very significant chapter.
Undeniably the end of the Second Elizabethan age.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've covered this extraordinary journey, haven't we? From that unexpected start to this immense, enduring legacy.
And hopefully for you listening, this exploration has given you a richer sense of the key moments, the vast changes she navigated, and that deep personal strength and duty that defined her service for over 70 years. Maybe a few of those aha moments we aimed for.
As you think about her life, maybe consider that sense of constancy she offered in such a rapidly changing world. What aspects of her dedication really stand out to you? How did her particular style of leadership, that quiet strength, the adaptability, the commitment, how did that shape history during her reign?
Her life really is a profound case study, isn't it? In leadership, service, handling incredible pressure. So maybe a final thought to leave you with. In a world that often seems to value, loud pronouncements and immediate results, what's the enduring power we can see in her example of quiet dedication, unwavering commitment, and just steadfast service over a lifetime?